change of pace, I'm going to talk about not code. I'm Vaughn Miller. I manage Apple devices at Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania. It's about 450 miles south of here. And I'm going to talk about ways that we can contribute to open source communities even if we don't write any code. So it all starts with community, right? So we build communities around the tools that we use. Um, you probably all get that because you're here in a community. So what are some of the places we find those communities? Email lists used to be bigger than they are. They're still relevant for some projects. We still have some email lists we use. Discussion messaging platforms like Slack or Discord or others. GitHub is of course another place where we build communities around tools and projects. I think earlier someone figured out that we're all on MacAdmin Slack. If you manage Apple devices, you ought to be on the MacAdmin Slack. If there's a tool that's built by MacAdmins for MacAdmins, it probably has a dedicated channel on the MacAdmin Slack. So if you find a tool useful in your environment and you start using it, jump in the relevant channel and join the discussion. GitHub is another obvious place that we have communities. Why should you have a GitHub account even if you're not going to write any code or submit pull requests? Well, there's a number of things a GitHub account's going to help you with, right? So following users, if somebody's made something interesting in the past, they're probably going to make something interesting in the future. So keeping tabs on what they're doing is helpful. Following repositories is a big one. You can choose to get notified when new issue discussions come up, or more importantly, new releases. So if a tool or a project's important in your environment, you should probably stay informed about what's going on with it and updates with it. You can favorite repositories and gists. I know I can never find my way back to an interesting gist if I saw one linked and didn't have time to look into it then. Like if I don't favorite it, I'll never find my way back to it. Submitting issues is a big one. That's one of the ways we help contribute to projects, is by submitting bug reports and issues, and joining the discussion on issues. Wikis are a big one. We'll talk about this a little more, but a lot of projects and repositories have editable wikis, and that's where that might be the main source of documentation for some projects. So contributing to the documentation is one of the ways we contribute. So support's a big deal because support becomes a burden to the maintainer or the originator of a project. If they have to support every user of the project, that can be a big time suck for them. So that's one way fellow users of a project can help to support. A lot of times when we come into a community for a project, into a Slack channel or email list or whatever, we come there to ask questions because we're trying to learn how to use this project. And you stick around long enough, you'll stay long enough to start giving answers to others who come along asking the same questions you were asking when you started out, right? We've seen this happen kind of over and over again, particularly in the monkey community, which has been around for a long time, right? Issues. Issues are a big one, big way we can contribute. So some things with issues, like I find it useful if I've never submitted an issue for a particular project, I find it useful to go in and read the existing issues, both open issues and closed issues. Might be someone's already reported your issue, maybe not, but reading through issues, you can kind of see the questions the maintainer asks. That helps you know what kind of information they need. You might also find things that, by reading through issues, particularly closed issues, find how they're going to react to certain requests. Some projects have issue templates, and if they do have issue templates, you should use it because it's going to walk you through providing the information that the maintainer is going to need to deal with your issue. Talk about the anatomy of an issue. You usually want to discuss your observed versus expected behavior. So I did X and Y happened, but I thought that when I did X, Z was going to happen. If there are verbose output from the tool, or there's relevant logs for the tool, you may want to include that. You want to be sure to sanitize that so you're not making public any anything you don't want out on the public internet. Include version information. That's both version of the tool you're using and version of the OS it's running on. And kind of similar to observe with expected behavior, but steps to reproduce. So what exactly did you do to get this output that you thought was wrong? If the maintainer can't reproduce your problem, they probably can't test a fix for it. So feedback, there's actually other kinds of feedback than just bugs. It's not always about bugs. So feedback could be in the form of feature requests. So you use a cool new tool and it does this thing really well. And you think, man, it'd be nice if it also did this other thing really well. So the thing to keep in mind is not all feature requests are accepted. So so maintainers may decide that either it doesn't fit with the direction of the project, or maybe it adds too much complexity to support. But feature requests are still valuable feedback because it does help inform maintainers how their tool is being used, and it can help inform the direction of tools. And so, if you don't ask, you don't know. So that's still valuable feedback. Accessibility is kind of a personal one for me. I have a weird vision impairment that makes me really care about dark mode and contrast a whole lot more than I used to. So, but I find most maintainers are going to be really amenable to that kind of feedback because they just don't know, right? So they want to do the right thing, they just need to know. So if you have needs like that, or you're aware of needs like that that others have, it doesn't hurt to speak up and provide that feedback. So beta testing is not just for Appleseed, right? if a tool is kind of core in your environment and there's beta versions of it out there, you should be doing some testing on that to make sure, number one, to make sure that it still works as you expect in your environment, but also then testing the new features to see how they work in your environment. And at the same time, you're also doing some bug hunting to make sure there's not bugs introduced in those new features, and you can provide that feedback to the maintainers. So I know like Outset and Monkey, they both do beta and release candidates. I'm sure other projects do as well. So documentation, sort of mentioned this earlier. That's, writing code well and writing user-facing documentation well are two distinct skills. And so this is a place where someone other than the developer can contribute. Wiki editing is one of the places we do documentation. I know Monkey has a fairly extensive wiki, so does AutoPackage. And so and this is a place also where newcomers to a project can really contribute, because if they were trying to go through a get started and it wasn't quite clear to them, they can kind of feedback to, well, this would be more clear if it was written this way, and that's how we continually improve those kind of guides. If you have a blog, writing about your experiences getting started with the project is really useful. A lot of times there may be lots of getting started guides out there, but those guides do tend to age over time. So I think there's always use for, new, fresh, getting started guides for a particular tool that evolve with time. Writing about cool different ways you use a particular tool can inspire other people to say, oh, I could use that in my environment. I hadn't thought of using it that way. So just writing about it is helpful to the community. Localization is interesting because I just thought of this because as I was writing this, Greg Nagel's working on new GUI features for Monkey that have text in them, and Monkey's used in many different languages around the world, so he asks the community for help with translating that text into the various languages. This is not something I'm particularly useful for because I only know one language, and I may or may not be all that good at that one. But this is a place that the community contributes back to the project even without having to contribute any code. They can just give the translation strings to Greg, and he plugs them into the project. So sharing how you use it, I sort of talked about this and writing about it, but Tony Young kind of had an interesting blog post, and one of the point he brought up that I hadn't thought of was simply sharing how you're using a project in informal discussions, whether it's in Slack channels or whatever, where the maintainers are, can help inform the maintainers and help inform the direction of a project if they understand how different environments are using their project. So that was a little bit of a twist that I hadn't thought of, but it's definitely one more way we can contribute to an open source community if we're using it. I think that's all I have. I talked way too fast, so we're probably gaining time. I did want to recognize Anthony because he's the one who nudged me into doing this presentation. He really wanted to be here this year, but his health didn't allow that to happen. So that's it. Any questions, comments?